They told me I'd be mentally diseased if I left, that I'd become like a gangrene infection spreading death to others. Turns out the real disease was what they were teaching all along. You ready? Let's get into it. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into something that affects millions of people worldwide, but rarely gets talked about openly: the profound emotional and psychological impact that Jehovah's Witness doctrines have on those who leave. Now, before we get started, I want to be clear. I am not a mental health practitioner, and this is not mental health advice. This is just my opinion as someone who lived this reality for 40 years, backed by extensive research into the subject and the testimonies of mental health professionals who specialize in religious trauma. You know, when you're born into something, it becomes your normal. For those of us who were raised as Jehovah's Witnesses, we didn't know there was another way to think, another way to be. The organization made sure of that. But here's what they didn't tell you at the Kingdom Hall. The very teachings they claim will protect you are often the ones that cause the deepest wounds. So you're aware, although I've referenced the Bible a bit in this video, this is not a strictly religious discussion. For faith-based content that doesn't focus on the Watchtower and Jehovah's Witnesses, see the link to my other channel in the video description below. Now, let's start with one of the most fundamental issues: the systematic destruction of independent thinking. The Watchtower has been remarkably transparent about their stance on this. In the November 2013 Watchtower, page 20, they stated, quote, "At that time, the life-saving direction that we receive from Jehovah's organization may not appear practical from a human standpoint. All of us must be ready to obey any instructions we may receive, whether these appear sound from a strategic or human standpoint or not." End quote. Think about that for a moment. They're literally telling you to obey even when the instructions don't make sense. This isn't new thinking. It's been their position for decades. In the January 15th, 1983 Watchtower, they were even more direct. Quote, "Avoid independent thinking, questioning the counsel that is provided by God's visible organization." End quote. They explain further in that same article, quote, "How is such independent thinking manifested? A common way is by questioning the counsel that is provided by God's visible organization." End quote. So according to them, simply questioning their teachings is a manifestation of dangerous independent thinking. They've created a closed loop here. You can't question them because questioning them proves you're thinking independently, which is forbidden. The Watchtower of August 15th, 1981 took this even further. Quote, "From time to time, there have arisen from among the ranks of Jehovah's people those who, like the original Satan, have adopted an independent, fault-finding attitude. They say that it is sufficient to read the Bible exclusively, either alone or in small groups at home. But strangely, through such Bible reading, they have reverted right back to the apostate doctrines that commentaries by Christendom's clergy were teaching 100 years ago." End quote. Let that sink in. According to Watchtower themselves, if you read the Bible on your own without their interpretation, you'll end up believing what mainstream Christianity teaches. Isn't that interesting? They're essentially admitting that their teachings require their indoctrination to make sense. Without their constant interpretation, people naturally come to different conclusions. But here's where the irony really kicks in. Charles Taze Russell, the founder of what became Jehovah's Witnesses, was himself an independent thinker who questioned the Presbyterian faith he was raised in. If independent thinking is so dangerous and satanic, then by their own logic, their entire organization was founded on a satanic principle. The impact of this teaching on mental health is devastating. Dr. Marlene Winnell, a psychologist who specializes in recovery from religious trauma, coined the term religious trauma syndrome specifically to describe the lasting psychological effects experienced by people leaving high control religious groups. When you're taught from birth that your own thoughts can't be trusted, that questioning is dangerous, it creates what psychologists call learned helplessness. In the October 2022 study edition of the Watchtower, page 20, they reinforce this message. Quote, one way is to avoid associating with those who show a critical attitude. This means that we do not listen to or read anything from apostates. We realize that if we are not careful, we could easily develop a critical spirit and begin to doubt Jehovah and the direction we receive through his organization. End quote. I remember the mental fog I lived in for decades. Every time a doubt crept in, every time something didn't make sense, you push it down. Where else would we go? We'd ask, quoting Peter's words to Jesus in John 6:68, Lord, to whom shall we go? Because that's how Watchtower put it. But they're twisting those words to mean the organization rather than Christ himself. The fear of thinking, the actual fear of using your own mind. Can you imagine living like that your entire life? Now let's talk about what the emotionally devastating practice of disfellowshipping and shunning does. The Watchtower has created a system so cruel that researchers have compared it to psychological torture, and I'm not being hyperbolic here. In the Watchtower of April 15, 1988, page 28, they state, quote, the situation is different if the disfellowshipped or disassociated one is a relative living outside the immediate family circle and home. It might be possible to have almost no contact at all with the relative. End quote. But by 2013, they had tightened the screws even more. The Watchtower of January 15, 2013 stated, quote, do not look for excuses to associate with a disfellowshipped family member, for example, through email, end quote. And in October 2017, page 16, they doubled down on this even more, quote, despite our pain of heart, we must avoid normal contact with a disfellowshipped family member by telephone, text messages, letters, emails, or social media, end quote. Now let me share what researchers found about this practice. A 2021 qualitative psychological research study published in Pastoral Psychology, that's a peer-reviewed academic journal, interviewed former Jehovah's Witnesses. This study, conducted by researchers with PhDs in psychology, found that shunning, quote, has a long-term detrimental effect on mental health, job possibilities, and life satisfaction, end quote. One participant in the study, Diana, shared something that still haunts me. She said she couldn't differentiate between her feelings of anger, sadness, disappointment, and other similar emotions. Now she carries a card with the name of emotions given to her by her therapist just to help her identify what she's feeling. This is what happens when you're taught to suppress and deny your emotions for your entire life. The research also found that participants reported, quote, feelings of loneliness, loss of control, and worthlessness, end quote, after leaving. The culture of informing on other members creates, quote, a continued sense of distrust and suspicion long after leaving, end quote. But here's what really gets me. The Watchtower knows exactly what they're doing. In the Awake magazine of May 22nd, 1983, page 15, they actually quoted Psychology Today. Quote, I know of no more potent killer than isolation. It has been shown to be a central agent in the etiology of suicide, end quote. They know isolation kills. They quoted this fact themselves, yet they continue to mandate the complete isolation of former members, including by their own family members. The irony here is overwhelming. In the Awake of July 2009, page 29, when talking about people leaving other religions to become Jehovah's Witnesses, they state, quote, no one should be forced to worship in a way that he finds unacceptable or be made to choose between his beliefs and his family, end quote. This is exactly what they force their own members to do, and they're saying this should not happen. The hypocrisy is staggering. They recognize it's wrong when other religions do it, but somehow when they do it, it becomes loving discipline. Now, I need to mention that in August 2024, they did change the terminology from disfellowshipped to removed from the congregation. But that's just a cosmetic change. It's lipstick on a pig. The shunning continues, the isolation continues, the emotional devastation continues. Perhaps one of the most damaging teachings is found in the Watchtower of July 15, 2011. The Simplified Edition puts it this way, quote, "The Bible says that apostates are mentally diseased and that they use their teachings to make others think like them. Jehovah is like that good doctor. He clearly tells us to stay away from false teachers." End quote. Think about what they're saying here. Anyone who leaves and speaks out against their teachings is mentally diseased. This isn't just cruel, it's a form of gaslighting that makes members doubt the mental sanity of anyone who questions the organization. In that quote, they cite 1 Timothy 6, but let's take a look at what that actually says. In most translations, verse 3 and 4, they speak of being puffed up with pride or conceited, not mentally diseased. The Watchtower has taken liberties with the translation to paint former members as literally insane. This teaching was reinforced as recently as April 2013, when the Watchtower on page 11 stated, quote, "Strong hope enables us to resist apostates and their gangrenous, empty speeches," end quote. And in a morning worship recording from September 2020, then governing body member Anthony Morris III described apostates as despicable enemies who joined forces with Satan the devil. The psychological impact of this teaching is profound. When you're considering leaving, you're already dealing with massive cognitive dissonance, fear, and uncertainty. Then you remember that they told you leaving will make you mentally diseased. It's a brilliant, if cruel, retention strategy. Growing up as a witness means growing up with constant anxiety about Armageddon. The teaching that we're living in the last days and that destruction could come at any moment creates what psychologists recognize as chronic anxiety disorder. Researchers from the University of Oslo, publishing their findings in the Journal of Empirical Theology in 2019, noted that, quote, "The deeply conditioned beliefs of a soon-to-come Armageddon creates members of society who have extreme difficulty functioning in day-to-day life," end quote. I remember being told not to pursue higher education because this system would end before I could use it. Way back in 1969, the Awake of May 22nd, page 15, told young people, quote, "If you are in high school and thinking about a college education, it means at least 4, perhaps even 6 or 8 more years to graduate into a specialized career. But where will this system of things be by that time? It will be well on the way towards its finish, if not actually gone." End quote. That was over 50 years ago. How many lives were derailed by this horrible advice? How many potential doctors, teachers, scientists never pursued their dreams because they were told the end was imminent? The organization creates an impossible standard of perfection while simultaneously teaching you that you're imperfect and sinful. This creates a psychological state that therapists recognize as toxic perfectionism. Lisa Magdalena, a therapist and former Jehovah's Witness with 25 years of experience helping former witnesses, notes that, quote, "Perfectionism, codependency, difficulty socially, never feeling good enough, lacking boundaries," end quote, are common issues that stem from life inside the organization." And she's not wrong from my experience. Former members commonly report struggling with never feeling good enough, chronic feelings of guilt and shame, inability to accept compliments or achievements, constant fear of making mistakes, and difficulty setting boundaries. For women, there's an additional layer of trauma due to the Watchtower's teachings. Research published in academic journals has shown that, quote, problems are amplified in female former members due to heavy themes of sexism and patriarchal narratives pervasive in Jehovah's Witness culture. End quote. Women who leave often struggle with learned helplessness, difficulty making decisions, internalized misogyny, struggles with independence and autonomy. Now, let me share some real experiences from people who've left. Paul, a former witness from the United Kingdom, shared in his written testimony, quote, "My wife and I are in torment most days. We keep relying on Christ and reading the scriptures." End quote. He described how the stress in coming out affects you physically, mentally, and emotionally, and he's not wrong. Perhaps most heartbreaking, he noted, quote, "Due to the pressures of being shunned and not knowing what they believe, some have taken their life," end quote. And this hits close to home. One of Beth's dear friends took his life due to Watchtower policy a few years ago. This is why specialized therapy is often necessary. Magdalena states that, quote, "mainstream therapy doesn't cut through the JW trauma," end quote, for many former witnesses. The unique nature of the indoctrination requires therapists who understand high control groups and religious trauma. But perhaps nothing illustrates the cruelty of the shunning doctrine more than its impact on families. The Watchtower, July 15, 2011, page 32 states, quote, "How would Jehovah feel, though, if the parents of an unrepentant wrongdoer kept putting him to the test by having unnecessary association with their disfellowshipped son or daughter?" End quote. They're literally telling parents that God will be angry with them if they maintain contact with their own children. The psychological manipulation here is breathtaking. In the book, Keep Yourself in God's Love from 2008, pages 207 to 208, they state, quote, "Although there might be a need for limited contact on some rare occasion to care for a necessary family matter, any such contact should be kept to a minimum," end quote. The irony of a book claiming to be about God's love making a statement like that is as striking as it is dark. One former witness shared this heartbreaking story on jwfacts.com. A grandmother hadn't seen her 6-year-old granddaughter for 18 months because her son was disfellowshipped. The 6-year-old said to her mother, quote, "I think it was people who just made that shunning up and not God, because I don't think he would do something such a nuisance. If you're in that religion when I'm a grown-up and can't come to see me, I will still come to see you," end quote. Out of the mouth of babes, right? A 6-year-old can see the cruelty in this practice, but grown adults have been so indoctrinated that they can't. The organization maintains control through fear at every level. Fear of Armageddon, fear of being disfellowshipped, fear of losing your family and your friends, fear of the outside world, fear of demons, fear of independent thinking, fear of God's displeasure, and on and on and on. This creates what psychologists call a phobia indoctrination, which is defined as, quote, "the inculcation of irrational fears to question the authority or the leadership or doctrine as it will result in terrifying negative consequences," end quote. Members become literally phobic of anything outside the organization. When someone does leave, they often experience panic attacks, severe anxiety, and sometimes agoraphobia. One former elder in research published in Pastoral Psychology shared, quote, "The stress in coming out affects one physically, mentally, and emotionally," end quote. He described experiencing suicidal ideation before seeking help. Throughout their literature, the Watchtower makes claims about the benefits of their way of life that are contradicted by the actual experiences of the people who leave the religion. They claim to offer true happiness, peace of mind, strong family bonds, and mental and emotional stability. But the research and testimonies show the opposite. Former members are known to struggle with depression and anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, suicidal ideation, broken family relationships, difficulty forming new relationships, trust issues, and identity crises. Despite the trauma, though, healing is possible. Mental health professionals who specialize in religious trauma have developed specific approaches. As I mentioned before, Lisa Magdalena, LCSW, a therapist and former Jehovah's Witness with 25 years of experience helping former witnesses, explains in her published work that recovery involves one, deprogramming, identifying and challenging the indoctrinated beliefs. Two, processing trauma, working through the emotional and psychological wounds. Three, rebuilding identity, discovering who you are outside of the organization. Four, developing critical thinking, learning to trust your own thoughts and decisions. Five, building new relationships, learning healthy relationship patterns. The recovery process is often long and difficult. Many former witnesses describe it being like a death and rebirth. Everything you thought you knew, everyone you loved, your entire worldview, it all has to be reconstructed. Jerome, a psychologist with a PhD who has studied Jehovah's Witness exit experiences, noted in an article published in April 2024 on preachfromthehousetops.com, quote, recovery from shunning takes time, and to have those old wounds opened up again is very, very cruel, end quote. One of the most important aspects of healing is having your pain validated. For too long, former witnesses have been told their suffering is their own fault, that they brought it on themselves by leaving the truth. But the real truth is that the pain is real, the trauma is real, and it's not your fault. The organization created a system designed to punish and traumatize the people who leave. Your pain is a normal response to an abnormal situation. Research has consistently shown that the practices of Jehovah's Witnesses, particularly shunning, cause genuine psychological harm. A 2024 study published in Pastoral Psychology found that, quote, experiencing religious shunning, end quote, has profound impacts on mental health and life satisfaction. This isn't about being weak or lacking faith. It's about being human and responding normally to psychological abuse, because that is what it is. Despite everything I've shared today, I want to end on a note of hope. Yes, the trauma is real. Yes, the pain is deep, but healing is possible. Thousands of former witnesses have rebuilt their lives, found happiness, created new families of choice, and discovered purpose beyond what they ever imagined. The journey out is difficult, but it's a journey toward authenticity, toward freedom, toward being able to use your own mind and trust your own feelings. It's a journey toward real love, not the conditional love offered by the organization, but unconditional love that doesn't depend on your meeting attendance or field service time or any of the other things that Watchtower over the years has saddled Jehovah's Witnesses with. For those still in who might be watching this, questioning, doubting, your feelings are valid. Your questions aren't dangerous. Your doubts aren't from Satan. That's your mind trying to protect you from harmful teachings. For those who've left and are struggling, you're not alone. The pain you're feeling is real, but it's not permanent. Healing takes time, but it does happen. There are resources, therapists who understand, communities of former witnesses who get it. Take advantage of those things. And for those who've never been a witness, but know someone who is or was, please be patient. The trauma is real, even if you can't fully understand it. Your support and validation can make a huge difference to those people. The Watchtower published a quote in 1957 that I find deeply ironic. In the August 1st Watchtower of that year, page 469, they wrote, quote, people today are developing an aversion to thinking. They fear being alone with their thoughts. Their thinking must be channeled for them, ready-made by propagandists. This suits Satan's purpose. Independent thinking is difficult, unpopular, and even suspect. Thought conformity is the order of our day, end quote. My, how times have changed. Back then, they preached against thought conformity. Today, they demand it under threat of shunning. Breaking free from thought conformity, learning to trust your own mind, healing from religious trauma. These are some of the most difficult things a person can do, I know from experience, but they're also some of the most important. Because at the end of the day, you deserve to live an authentic life. You deserve to think freely. You deserve relationships that aren't conditional on your beliefs. You deserve to pursue your dreams without fear of an imminent Armageddon. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not what you believe. The organization may have taught us we were worthless without them, but they were wrong. Our worth isn't determined by our field service hours or meeting attendance or any of that stuff. It's inherent in our humanity. To everyone watching who's been affected by these teachings, whether you're still in, recently out, or have been out for years, your story matters. Your pain is real. Your healing is possible. And your life has value beyond what any organization can give or take away. Thank you for joining me on this difficult but important journey today. Remember, questioning isn't apostasy, it's wisdom. Thinking isn't dangerous, it's human. And leaving isn't weakness, sometimes it's the strongest thing you can do. Until next time, keep thinking, keep questioning, and keep healing. If you're still a Christian, click the link in the video description for my faith-based channel. Also, if you're still a Christian, check this out. I wanted to take a second to tell you about my book. The Broken Mirror, Rediscovering Our True Nature in Christ, will transform how you see yourself forever. Stop living as a struggling sinner trying to be good enough and discover you're already a beloved child of God with His divine nature flowing through you. This book will free you from shame, give you unshakable identity, and show you how to access God's peace, wisdom, and strength from within. The book shows how this story unfolds from Genesis to Revelation and teaches you to live from rest, see others as fellow image bearers, and step into your true calling as a radiant reflector of divine light. Your daily struggles will become opportunities for God's nature to shine through you. Get ready to live the abundant life Jesus promised. The link to the book is in the video description. Hard copy, Kindle, and audiobook versions are all available. May God bless your journey along His path for you.